Hi there, this is Patricia Fenty from patriciafenty.com, and today I'm going to show you how to make this really beautiful bracelet. It's a beaded wrapped bracelet, and this one is in a brown tone color. Bring that up a little closer so you can see that better. And so we're going to make a bracelet form, like a bracelet shape, and then we're going to use fine wire to weave the beads on top of that. And this is the one I'm actually doing in the demo. It's a red one. So you'll be weaving the beads on, going around the bracelet frame and back and forth and in and out of the beads. So come along with me on this creative journey to make this really pretty bracelet. So the supplies that you will need to make this bracelet is, of course, some wire, and it's a 16 gauge wire. I'm going to use copper wire, but you can use any wire you like. You'll need a 20 gauge wire, and that can be in the same color or a complementary color. And then you will also need a 28 gauge, a really fine wire for wrapping the beads around the bracelet. And again, it can be the same color or mix them up. You'll need a cloth tape measure, round nose pliers, flat nose pliers, and side cutters. And then you're going to need assortment of glass beads, seed beads and glass beads, all sizes, all colors. And I'm going to use sort of gold tones with a red accent. But I find you can get these beads, these packages of mixed beads, like this one here. These are sort of lavender purple colors. I just get these from the dollar store. This is a mix of green beads. It has some metallic beads and such. And here's a mix of blue and teal color beads. And these are great. So yeah, the craft store or dollar store, you can get these. And then you can get some mid-tone beans, some neutral colors. So these are gold, black, brown, and white. So you can use that, or you can get some black, silver, white beads like that. And then you're going to want these really, really tiny seed beads. These are the smallest seed beads you can get. These are really great for filling in sort of spaces where a bigger bead won't wrap around the bottom of the wire, say. It's kind of hard to explain, but you'll see once you get going with that. And the other thing that is helpful, it's not necessary, but you can use a form of some sort that you can initially shape your bracelet form on. So most of us, our wrists are oval shape. You can see this is kind of oval shape. But once you get that initial round shape, you can easily form it more into the wrist shape. So just something that can start you off with a basic round shape. So there you go. Let's get started. Oh, and I forgot to mention, you may want to use one feature bead, so a glass bead that's bigger than all the others. And you can see here where I've put that at the top of the bracelet, a feature bead. So you can do that as well. You don't have to, but if you like to, you can have a feature bead. All right, so I've laid this placement down here. It's a good idea because when you're working like a wire like this and you're cutting little bits of wire, it's easy to find your little end pieces, and it's also easy to find your beads if you drop them. And I put my little wire ends in a little cup like that. You can do that if you like. So to figure out what size wire you need to cut, what you want to do is measure the circumference of your wrist. Measure it all the way around. So mine is 6 inches or 15 centimeters. And then you want to add 4 inches or 10 centimeters. And that's for the 16 gauge wire. So you need an extra 4 inches for your main bracelet frame. And so then the second wire, the 20 gauge wire, which is part of the frame, you want to cut that 6 inches longer or 15 centimeters. So here I've got a 10-inch piece and a 12-inch piece. You'll have a little bit left over, but that's all right. All right, so you're going to start with your 16 gauge wire. And what you want to do is you want to create spirals on each end of your wire. So you just take your round nose pliers and start to create this spiral. And I'll just say that I don't do a lot of wire work. I'm sort of a jack of all trades and a master of none. So you can see, like for me, it's a little bit awkward, and for you, it might be awkward as well. This heavier gauge wire is tricky. It's tricky to work with, and you kind of don't want to mark your wire, so you have to be very gentle. And so I do find it a little bit hard to get the spiral started. So once I get it going a bit, I don't actually crimp that on there. I just use it very gently to hold it in place. Because you really don't want to mark your wire. And you can try using your fingers. It's kind of better actually if you have the type of pliers that have the little plastic thing in there. I don't have those. So you can use your flat nose pliers to very, very gently get this spiral going more so. And yeah, there we go. That's getting it to spiral some. And then once you get it going, it's easier to use your thumb to get it going. So just like that. So you want to do that on both ends. So I'll be right back. So there we go. And then you can use your form to sort of start to make the shape of the bracelet. But then you just can put it on your wrist and then start to form it around your wrist and get the shape going that way. And then you want to fold these spirals sideways. So you can just gently fold it sideways, and you can either fold them in opposite directions or in the same direction. I'm going to fold them in opposite directions, so I'm going to take it off to do that. So you have the one going in the one direction, and then you just turn the other one, and it's going in the opposite direction. And then you can just play with it a bit and just shape it and start to create your basic form, making it into a wrist shape. This is very small because my wrists are small, but you just want to sort of get the general shape of the wrist, just like that. And so that's your beginning frame. And it doesn't have to be perfect because we're going to be covering it with beads and fitting it on the wrist better when it's done. All right, so once you have the basic shape, then you want to wrap your 20 gauge wire around the bracelet to make more of a frame and a support for the beadwork. So just hold about a 1-inch tail nearest to one of your spirals and start wrapping that around the bracelet. And this first bit is a little bit awkward to get started. And excuse me. And as I say, I'm not a master wire weaver, but you know, it's still easy to do. And so just get a few wraps going, and you can use your flat nose plier to kind of crimp it together and make them nice and snug together. And we just do about 4 wraps all together. So I'm going to bring this tail around one more time, just like that. And you can crimp it together again. So you just want to get it started like that. And then you're going to take the wire And you're going to sort of loosely wrap it around the bigger wire, keeping this loose so that you're just creating a bit of a foundation. Just a loose kind of wrap, kind of like you're making a frame. And so once you get 2 wraps like that, then you can do 2 tight wraps or snug wraps to hold that in place. And this is all going to be covered by beads, so it doesn't have to be perfect. Essentially what you're doing is you're creating some structure and body for the frame. So this kind of snugged up on me, so I'm just going to push it back so it's a little bit more bulkier. So you're just wanting to wrap so you have the body. So I'll just speed it up here, and you can just continue to wrap in the same way all the way around the 16 gauge wire, and then you can just finish off at the end here with 4 wraps, and as you did at the beginning. And this is much easier once you get to this side. There we go. And then you want to trim your ends towards the inside of the bracelet. Where's my cutters here? So just nip it with the flat end to the inside. I'll bring this one around to the inside and snip that nice and close. And then you just use your flat nose pliers to crimp that down and crimp it and tuck it in there. And again on this side. And your bracelet is going to sort of go wonky as you're working on it, but we'll be shaping it at the end. So you can just straighten out your spirals, and there you go. Now you have the frame, and we can start wrapping the beads on there. So we'll do that next. All right, so now comes the fun part. We're going to start weaving all the beads onto your bracelet frame. So I have all my beads over on the side here, and I'm just going to zoom in so you can see what I'm doing here. So now you're going to take your 28 gauge wire, and you can calculate about how much wire you're going to need, in that every 10 inches of the 28 gauge wire will wrap about 1 inch of your bracelet. So measure from this coil here all the way to here, and for me it's 5 inches. So I've cut 50 inches of 28 gauge wire, and then I just cut another 10 inches for good measure. So you can cut yourself a piece like that. So in the beginning, it's going to be a little bit awkward because you're dealing with a long length of wire. But once you get going, it'll work out nicely. I don't know how well you can see this. So just start at the base here, at the base of your bracelet, and just before that 20 gauge wire, just in front of it, between that and the spiral. Just wrap it a few times. I'm actually going to go this way here. Wind your tail around the end there. I'll just wind it one more time there, bringing it in nice and snug. And then you can snip that off. Actually, I don't even need to snip it off. I was able to just tuck it in under here. And then just do a couple of wraps up towards at the end of this piece here. So what you want to do, I'm having to find the end of my wire here, and unfortunately the only way to do this is to just put on a few beads at a time, because you'll see in a minute. So you want to start with a really tiny seed beads, and you kind of want to taper your beads. So you do some tiny beads, some bigger beads, and then go back down to tiny beads. And these are really these are really tricky to get on, even though I'm wearing my glasses. You definitely need a fine hand for this. And I'll take a red bead. It's a little bit bigger. I'll string that on. And then what you're going to do is just going to work all your beads on the top side of your bracelet frame. So I brought that around, and then you wrap your wire, do another little wrap or two to hold that bead in place. And then you can string on some more beads. And you know, it's a little bit monotonous at first, but it's also kind of relaxing as well. It's just a fun and creative thing to do. So there I've got a bigger bead and a smaller bead. And then I'm going to even a smaller bead here. So again, you're sort of tapering your beads from big to small and small to big. And just bring this back down, thread it on. And so then I'm going to tuck this bigger bead in here, and see, I'm going to hold these beads and I'm going to wrap around and snug it up, and then I'm going to bring them back and sort of go a little bit backwards and wrap it around again on the inside. And you just start to build your beads on the top of the frame, on the top of the bracelet frame. And I'll string on some more beads, and you can bring your wire, thread it back through into some of the beads to make it more secure. I'm going to put on some more really tiny clear beads here. Put a couple of those on. And I'm going to put on one of these cone-shaped. I'll put a red one on so you can see that. So I'll just string that on and bring that down. And once you get going, you'll get into the flow of this. So you can see that one would tuck nicely there. And then the little white ones there. And I'll pull this bead back and string that around to secure it. And then I'll lay this cone-shaped one or tube-shaped one in the other direction. And there you go. So you're kind of going back and forth, and as I say, you can string the wire in through some of the beads to hold them in place. It's just sort of like a weaving process. And again, you want to weave them on the top. There aren't any beads on the bottom here. All the beads are on the top. So that's all you do. So you keep adding your beads all the way along, building it up, and then go ahead and do that. And once we get to the middle part, we're going to add the feature bead, and I'll show you how to do that once we get to the middle. So carry on, and we'll see you once we get to the middle. I just want to show you here how you can work in slightly longer beads. So I've used a couple across here, but here's one long narrow bead. When you come to one of these supports here, you can use a support to hold that bead sideways, and then you can weave your wire in this wire here or back into one of the other wires. There's no real rule. You you can just creatively wind your beads on and weave them along the top. So I just wanted to show you that longer piece, how you can set that in. So carry on and we'll see you at the middle. All right, so once you get to the center of your bracelet, if you want to have a feature bead, you can string it on now and just place it at the top center. And then you just are going to wrap it around securely like this. And here you want to make sure to thread the wire back in through there a couple of times. And then you're going to build some beads underneath here to support that. So I'll go ahead and do that and I'll show you what that looks like. So here's what I mean. So you can see where I strung some beads underneath the bottom to support the top bead, and then I strung them along here. And again, making sure that you're stringing the wire back through the main bead and stringing it through the support beads, because you want to make sure that main bead is really secure. So there you go. So then you just carry on building your beads on your bracelet frame till you get to the end. All right, so here we are. I'm sorry the camera isn't focused very well, but you can see all the beads are woven on. And as I said before, you can just weave in and out of the beads themselves to secure the wire. So now that we're at the end, you can just finish off by bringing your wire down over the 20 gauge and wrap a few times between the spiral and the 20 gauge. And you can just sort of crimp that in with your fingers and wrap it around like that. Bring it to the inside of the bracelet and then just snip it off with your wire cutters, and then you can just crimp it in with your fingers because it's so soft. And there you go. I'll just zoom out a bit so you can see this on my arm. So then you can just fit it onto your arm and then shape it, because the wire is quite flexible, so you can mold it and shape it to fit your wrist nice and snug like that. And there you go. Isn't that pretty? And you know, this is a pretty easy project to do. It'd make a wonderful gift to give. So there you go. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial, and please give it a thumbs up, and you can like it and subscribe to my channel for more fun and creative videos. Thank you for joining me.